And welcome back to Across the Ocean, the show for underwater image enthusiasts here on YouTube. I am Matthias from Zurich.
And my name's James in Miami.
It's great to see all your smiling faces, guys. In particular, the smiling face right over there on the other side of the ocean. James, my friend, how are you?
Doing real well, buddy. Really good. Yeah, we're solidly into March now. You know, I can't believe we're almost a quarter of the way through the year. It's absolutely insane.
Incredible.
Staying busy, a lot of teaching, a lot of shooting. It's been fantastic. So yeah, doing all good here. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Things are moving onwards, as you say. It's really difficult to grab or put my head around the fact that the first quarter has pretty much already passed and we're so far into the year already. But this also means that good things are coming closer, like trips that are ahead of us, new projects that are waiting for us. So yeah, good times, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Now, today, James, we have come together to talk about something that I wanted to talk about, to talk to you about this for quite some time. We'll talk about using smartphones to film underwater, film and photograph underwater. Now, we might have some quite different views on this topic, and that's pretty much why I wanted to talk about this topic with you, because I think it's important that our viewers get different perspectives on such a topic and see the different point of views that the two of us have in this area. Now, I know that you have used GoPros, especially at the beginning of your YouTube journey, and most of your early day videos on your YouTube channel have been shot with a GoPro.
I still use them today as well. I still use them today.
You still use them today?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but now the majority of your content is shot with the GH5, right?
Correct, yeah.
Correct, yeah. But I don't really know if you've ever used smartphones to capture anything that we might have ever seen on Divers Ready.
Yeah, I have, yeah. Back in the early days when I was getting set up, I didn't have, you know, GH5 money, or certainly not Nordicam housing money. So I was trying to get the highest quality content I could produce on a budget. So GoPros are a great way of doing that. They're, you know, getting better with every iteration. They just keep cranking up the specs and so on. And I already had a GoPro, and of course I already had a smartphone. So for me to reach out and get my hands on a housing, which is what I did, was sort of no stresses at all. This is actual the Kraken smart housing, which is made, it actually says here, designed by WeFine in China. It's an aluminium housing. It's got a good solid O-ring. It's got a vacuum system. It's got a leak detection alarm with an LED that gets angry with you if the pressure drops and all that kind of good stuff. And it's ergonomical. It's very easy to work. It connects via Bluetooth. So I did use that quite extensively in the very early days, like the pre-dive locker days of Divers Ready. Yeah, I have used them, yes, for sure.
Okay, so what are your thoughts, or what is your experience using smartphones?
Yeah, so the cameras on the smartphones are incredible. You know, you've got people like Steven Soderbergh, big Hollywood director, who's shooting entire thriller movies on iPhone, right? And I'm not just saying iPhone, obviously, you know, Samsung and all the other phone makers have amazing image quality. When you upgrade a phone, when you buy a new phone, you're buying a better camera. You think about it, nothing's happened with like text messaging, nothing's happened with phone calls or internet browsing or music or anything else that your phone does. You don't get a better microphone, you don't get a better speaker. Like the phone is the same, it's been the same for 9 or 10 iterations, no matter which brand you subscribe to. The only thing they're focused on improving every single time is the camera, because really you're buying a camera that can make phone calls, not a phone that can take pictures. So the image quality is absolutely fantastic, for sure. This is where Matthias and I differ. I never wanted to be the guy. I remember when, like, the early days of phones when they were the size of, like, you know, a book, and you're like, hello, you know, and you'd and they were huge, they were heavy. Very few people had them. Not everyone had them. Like, I'm talking pre-smartphone days. I didn't want to have a cell phone. I didn't want to have a mobile phone. I had a few Nokia flip phones and Motorola's back in the day and that kind of stuff, but I never wanted to be the person that was like always on the mobile phone, always had the mobile phone with me. And now, of course, as a business owner in this day and age, I'd be lost without one. You know, I run the entire show, Divers Ready, Miami Technical Diving, calling clients. You know, if I didn't have my phone, as sad as it is to say, my business would suffer. There's no other ways around it. I don't have a tool that does what this does. So I have a lot of nerves now about taking this underwater, because in the event that something flooded, yes, I could get another phone, I can replace it, or hopefully the damage isn't too severe that I couldn't rinse it, get the salt off of it, dry it out, and hopefully it would still be functioning. But even the amount of time that would take would have a negative impact on my ability to conduct a business, because I am on my phone so much, as sad as that makes me. So one of the things I looked for when I was thinking about filming and starting the channel was to get a housing of high quality. Aluminium, not plastic, not one of those little flimsy bags that has, you know, the waterproof properties of a Ziploc. I wanted something that was weighty and high quality. That was important to me. I still get nervous. I still get nervous about it flooding, so I pretty much moved away from using it and committed to GoPro until we got to the level where I could go to mirrorless and get a big housing and the whole game. So I know we differ from that, because I know you're a massive fan of using phones underwater. So why don't you tell us a bit about why you're such a big supporter of using phones for underwater filming?
Yeah, with pleasure. Well, see, the thing is that I have not always been a big supporter of using smartphones underwater, and I have used some of the housings that you talked about. I've used the Wi-Fi or the Kraken housing myself. In the early days, I also used the Sport Diver Sea Life housing, which is sort of a very similar design to the Kraken and the Wi-Fi housing. And with these smartphone housings, oftentimes I found that the app, the third-party app, was very limiting that you get and that you have to use with the housing to be able to use the camera, because obviously with these housings, you can't use the touchscreen. There's no way of using your phone in the intended way, so you need that app, and that app kind of cripples your smartphone, especially the very powerful smartphones that we have nowadays. These third-party apps just don't really work too well, in my opinion, with your smartphones, and that put me off at the beginning. But then I discovered something else. I discovered a housing, the DIVEVOLK, that actually has a touchscreen functionality, and that changed my mind about smartphones and using smartphones underwater dramatically from really one day to another, because now I can use the smartphone in the intended way, that I can use all the internal functions, I can use all the functions of the camera, even functions that were blocked out on the third-party apps. I can use them now, and that makes a huge difference to me being able to use that smartphone. I'm personally not very concerned about flooding my phone for a variety of different reasons. I understand that diving in saltwater might be a bit of a different story, but I oftentimes dive in the Swiss lakes here, and freshwater is a bit of a different story in my opinion. All the modern smartphones, they are waterproof to a certain degree, and I don't know how scientifically this is and how long they will withstand being in water. The things that the manufacturers tell us, they differ quite a bit, but I'm quite confident that even if the housing floods and I have water on my smartphone, if I can bring it up to the surface within, let's say, 15-20 minutes and dry it out, it will survive. That's my personal opinion. I'm not saying that this is how it is, so please don't make me responsible for what I'm saying here.
And if I can jump in there as well,
please.
On the subject of flooding and phone saturation and the waterproof nature of phones as well, it should be noted that I generally dive a lot deeper than Matthias would normally do. So when I film, if I'm filming, I'm normally on deep recs, which is obviously, you know, low light conditions, not ideal for filming unless you're taking artificial lights down with you. But we got to talk about delta P, right? Because one of the things we talked about pre-filming is if your phone floods in the shallows, well, you're probably at the waterproof depth of your phone anyway. So now you've just got a wet phone, you dry it out. The delta P for me, if I'm diving at 5 atmospheres, when that phone floods, it's beyond, you know, and it's not going to flood a little bit. If we're at 5 atmospheres and the internal pressure is a vacuum, 0 atmospheres, it's going to flood. So that makes a big difference as well, I think. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Absolutely. That's a very good point you're making, because oftentimes when I'm filming, I oftentimes don't really go much deeper than the 10-meter mark, because that's where I get most of my natural light and most of the life and everything. So that's where I normally stick around. So yeah, that's definitely one thing that has brought me into liking smartphones for filming underwater much more, being able to use the phone's camera to its full potential, which now is possible with such a housing where you can use the touchscreen. And let me tell you, these smartphone cameras, as you said before, man, they're powerful nowadays. It's incredible what you can do with these cameras. And just to give you a bit of an example, a couple months ago, last year in September, I was competing at the Swiss Underwater Videography Championship. We have that every 2 years here in Switzerland. And I was competing in a championship, and deliberately I chose not to use my GH5S setup. I didn't want to use my Red Komodo setup, but I deliberately chose to compete with my iPhone 13 Pro inside the DIVEVOLK housing and some video lights. And surprise, surprise, I won the competition using a smartphone. And I really wanted to make that case by going with such a setup to see whether or not the quality of these phones is good enough to compete in a competition and rank further up in that competition. And it apparently it is. And that's something that really surprised me personally as well. I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to do that. And it really shows me that the power that lies within using smartphones to film and photograph underwater is getting to a point which is going to be, it's just going to get better in the future, more attractive for so many divers out there. Yeah, no, for sure. So super high quality image. You mentioned as well, everyone has a phone, so there's an accessibility aspect to shooting with iPhones. And one of the things I'm a big fan of is getting as many people into taking images underwater. Not because, I want everyone to be world-class photographers, but at whatever level you can take images, showing people who are not divers, your friends and family and people on social media, the beauty of the underwater world has a huge impact on conservation. If people understand what's below the surface, there's a better sense of people not, throwing plastic waste into the ocean or whatever the impact you can have for people who are non-divers. So the more people we can get into taking images underwater, I'm all for that. And the accessibility of everyone has an iPhone, now you've got a housing which is a lot more reasonably priced than a big, camera rig setup, gets more people into it, and that's definitely a plus from my side, I would say. What have your experiences been traveling with an iPhone, or I don't know, do you use iPhone? Do you use Samsung? What do you use? I use an iPhone.
Yeah, so what have your experiences been traveling or shooting on location with your iPhone and iPhone housings?
They've been very good, actually. And this is also one of the big advantages, I think, when using smartphones to capture your underwater adventures, specifically your underwater adventures while you're away on vacation. Simply because now you don't have to bring, and I mean you've done it as well, bring your big GH5 rig with you, and like it's just a lot of stuff that you carry with you. And if you're going, it's different if you're going to a location and you're going to be diving, you're going to be filming and diving pretty much all the time. But if you go even for a weekend getaway, or if you go for a week, let's say to Greece, right? So you're doing a family vacation in Greece and you're planning on maybe doing 1 or 2 dives. right? I wouldn't bring my whole rig with me for those 1 or 2 dives that I might or might not be doing there. But if it's a matter of, you know, packing this in my luggage and my phone that I have with me anyways, well then I'll take it on those 2 dives and I'll capture some shots and I have something that I can then share and show to other people. And that goes directly into what you were saying before, having more content from underwater that we can share on social media, because I still think that we have to represent the underworld much better on our social media networks and just flood it with nice images and nice videos from underwater to show people what we have down there, and as you were saying, to help raise that awareness that we need to put more effort into protecting the world underwater. So from that standpoint, it is a breeze to use your smartphone on a vacation or a short trip, and it just makes the logistical part so much easier. Like for example, last year in June I was in Bali with my wife, and it was, of course I was diving, but it wasn't per se a dive vacation, and I didn't bring my big rig, but I only brought my iPhone 13 Pro, the DIVEVOLK housing, and one underwater video light. And that was it, and I was still able to capture some really cool shots without, you know, having to bring an extra piece of luggage with me on that trip. So that is definitely a big plus from my side, yeah. But yeah, James, I do completely understand that some people like yourself do have some concerns about using their smartphone underwater, just tiny small concerns.
Little bit.
And that's okay, I mean, what I'm trying to say with this is that if you don't feel comfortable using your phone underwater, then you probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
Right? Then it's probably better to just stick to using a GoPro or your regular underwater camera, your dedicated device that you're using to film underwater or take photos underwater. But if you're willing to take that, in my opinion, quite small risk of having a flood on your phone, then I think using a smartphone to film and photograph underwater is going to open up a completely new world and a lot of new possibilities for a lot of people that are not taking photos or taking videos underwater. And I would really like to see that become a reality and more people using their phones to film and photograph underwater. So guys, let us know what you think about the usage of smartphones underwater. Are you pro smartphones underwater? Are you rather against the usage of smartphones underwater? Are you Team Matthias or are you Team James on this one? I'd be really curious to see where our community stands here and how you see this topic. And maybe we have to go and dive a little bit deeper into this whole discussion in a future video sometimes in the future. But I think this is pretty much it for today's video, unless you, James, have something else that you would like to add to this.
No, I think that's a good introduction to the topic.
Excellent. So in this case, thank you so much guys for watching. As always, we'll link anything that is relevant to what we talked about today down in the video description below. Most importantly, if you are not a subscriber of both of our channels, please make sure to compensate for that right away. Give us a like if you enjoyed today's topic, and we are looking forward to seeing all your smiling faces again in about a month's time. See you guys in the next one.
Take care.